Disney seems to have struggled mightily when it comes to their Disney Plus content, not movies made for Disney Plus, although Peter Pan and Wendy was pretty darn awful as well. But specifically today, we're talking about Disney Plus shows, original content. We're talking about Star Wars, we're talking about Marvel. And when it comes to Marvel, we're here to tell you that based on this most recent episode of Loki, we have something very shocking to tell you, something that you have never heard before on this channel. It's time to bring in Lauren Connor and talk about what happened. I suppose it's about that time. So folks, we are used to coming on to videos such as this and telling you just how bad Disney is and telling you that Marvel stinks and Star Wars is bad. And well, I don't know what we're going to say now. Of course, those things have not always been that way. It's just been in the last few years that these sorts of things have happened, where the House of Mouse has gotten away from high-quality storytelling. Lauren Connor and I have just finished watching Loki Season 2, Episode 4, and it was a real pickle as to what we needed to cover today. We've got many of our friends who went out and saw Five Nights at Freddy's, and they have lots to say about that, and it's particularly interesting in how that's going to go with the entertainment industry. At the same time, Loki really isn't generating all that much in terms of internet interest. And yes, we do have to pay attention to that when we're selecting what we're going to cover. But I'm glad that we are talking Loki today. And Lauren, I guess I'll start with you and just get your take on this episode. I have a question for you, though, about it once you give us your first take. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this was my least favorite episode of this season so far, but it wasn't awful. It was just kind of plodding and kind of putting characters in places. They did do a couple of surprising things, and there were a couple of things I liked about it. I especially liked the callback to Back to the Future and having the scale model and not being complete and apologizing for it not being quite correct. I thought that was kind of cute. Especially because we're all dealing with time travel here. There were a couple of points of confusion for me, I think just because we're dealing a little bit with some time loops now, I believe. I'd have to go back and watch a couple of prior episodes just to remind me of what exactly happened somewhere else and what that might mean for how this goes forward. I'm still in the position that every single time I see Sylvie on the screen, I just want her off. She's a deeply unpleasant character, and she brings the show to a screeching halt every time that she appears. On the other hand, there were some interesting theories that I heard this week from others that I think might play into some interesting plot points involving her. Possibly. I thought it was an intriguing theory that was interesting, and I want to see if it plays out. But that's about all I've really got for this episode. It didn't really do a whole lot for me. It was just kind of marking time until we get to the next one.
All right, so Lauren, here's what I don't fully understand. So I get most of this episode. What I don't understand, and it's possible that this is just simply bad writing. It's also possible that it's something that's over my head at the moment. When they sent Renslayer and Miss Minutes to the end of time, I thought they did so with the understanding that that would be something that would encapsulate them. They could never escape, yada, yada. They escaped it pretty darn easily. And I also don't understand exactly how they escaped it, but I've got two steps there. Step one is, am I missing something, that there was some ingenious way that they got out of the end of time that our heroes did not expect them to do? And then two, what the heck was the way they got out of there?
I actually didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It didn't strike me as being incongruent there, but it may be. Again, I'm a week removed from last week, and so I didn't think that they were stranded there.
Remember, they were thrown in instead of killing them. They decided to throw them into some sort of purgatory, right? And so they threw them to the end of time where they could just sit there and rot. And now they're out.
Well, I think I was more surprised that Sylvie ended up going with everybody else back to the TVA, because I gathered that she wanted Victor Timely out of her sight. She didn't want to be around him, and yet here she is with them again. So There's a little bit of incongruousness between last week's episode and this one, but I was kind of chalking it up to just me possibly not paying close enough attention. So I'd have to go back and review that too, I guess. I didn't quite catch that.
Now, I thought that the sets were excellent here. We got to see more of the TVA, and I thought, everything, including the CGI, was very well done. I really enjoy how they've basically gone for a BioShock sort of motif with everything, and it's impressive how much they committed to that, and so positives there. When it comes to Miss Minutes, what did you think about Miss Minutes and her the way that she is trying to manipulate the playing board?
I've always kind of enjoyed that character in this series just because she's it's an interesting take. It's a very comic booky kind of thing to do. Tara Strong's always great whenever she does voice work. I'm always happy to hear her doing stuff, and I think she's doing a great job with Miss Minutes. I am curious to see, now that she's been rebooted, is she really dead, or are we going to see another version of her? I'm curious to see where they go with that.
So we're heading into heavy spoiler territory, but Lauren, it seems like everybody's dead. Not even just Miss Minutes, but I don't think that's actually the case. This is the danger the show delves into. They are pulling the throne room with Snoke card, where things are happening now that you just really never think can happen unless it's the very end of a show or a movie. Now, if there's a wonderful payoff to this and it makes sense, then I think it will be a lot of fun. If, on the other hand, we come on the other side of this and it's a mystery box that does not have answers, this is going to go down as a very frustrating episode. So this all hinges, right? This is a cardinal situation, folks. The word cardinal, of course, is an old Latin word that refers to the hinges on a door. This is a cardinal situation in which the outcome of the next episodes will determine how much I liked this one. Lauren, were you at all shocked by what you saw in terms of everyone meeting their demise?
Well, I'm not surprised that they pulled out a big cliffhanger like that. I think you always want to have something like that in a story, especially these kinds of stories. You want to have a twist that makes the audience go, "I didn't see that coming." There were a couple in this episode, and the first is the one that I think I'm going to have to think about a little bit more, because it was when you see Loki approach Loki
And kill Loki.
and take himself out. That's the time loop thing that I was talking about. And when I first watched that, my assumption was that, okay, so the first time that we saw this happen, when he earlier in the season, when he's apparently in agony, and then you see Sylvie coming out the elevator, my assumption was that he didn't die the first time that we saw this. This was part of what was going on in that scene earlier in the show. And so my thought was, he's killing himself there so that the events that we have seen take place in this show's past now can't take place because he's taking himself out in the past, and that will change the outcome of where he's at in his present. If you follow me.
If they do it, though, they have to explain it in a way that the average viewer can understand.
Well, I think the problem with that is that now we're going into the same conversation that you have in Back to the Future or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or any of those where you have these branching timelines. It's like, but if he took himself out, and that means that the things that he did from the audience's perspective, the past, but his killed self's future, then the reality that he's in shouldn't take place and everything should have vanished. But if that's not how time works here, and instead that's a branch, and now he's created another branch, then I would guess that next week's episode, that's why it doesn't matter that everybody was killed here, we'll be exploring the characters who are in the branch of the new timeline that he created. If you can follow all of that.
Well, and that is the challenge. They must make that understandable, comprehensible for the average viewer, because you, Lauren, are not the average viewer. I don't consider myself to be one, although I think you're ahead of me on many ways. But the average viewer, the average kid who's sitting and watching this, they've got to be able to understand it. So they've got to untangle all of those knots, and those are knots aplenty. I want to give another criticism to the show, and then I want to give it some praise. So, Lauren, my criticism of the show here is that they have repeatedly now, in multiple episodes, acted as if these branches being wiped out are tantamount to just the worst things you can imagine, and they present these lines in such a horrific way. The problem here is that we haven't seen any of that, and
Well,
so the box scene where they squeeze them to death in this, even though we don't see it, that still is more gripping, I think, than the fact that trillions of people across these timelines are being wiped out, because we don't see any of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was one of the things I wanted to call out as me liking in this episode, is that when they do the murder in the box, that really showcases just how important sound design is. And
Hmm.
so when
Those
that's all
screams.
over, when that's all over and all you hear is wet sounds. Yeah, they don't show you anything, but you hear this awful kind of a squelching, and it's like, okay,
Yep.
that was clever.
Somebody
Um,
squeezed a tomato to make that happen.
Now, the other thing that I wanted to say, and this will get into that theory that I think I read it. I want to say it was something that I saw in passing on X or Twitter. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but it might explain. You're saying that they haven't shown us the impact of these branch timelines being pruned. And so it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see what the impact really is. What this theory was, and I wish I could give credit to whoever it was that put it up if it ends up being true, was that this is why Sylvie keeps pushing on Mobius to say, you haven't even looked to see what your life was, have you? She keeps trying to push Mobius there. And the theory was Mobius was Jack at the McDonald's in the timeline where she went to start her own life. And so the theory was that Jack at McDonald's is her romantic interest, that she falls in love with Jack at McDonald's. And they were saying that they thought that I think Jack was the name, the McDonald's clerk, his mannerisms were very similar to Owen Wilson's. And they felt like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So if that's the case, then okay. Then at least you can kind of begin to understand some of Sylvie's motivation, and that gives you a very interesting backstory for Mobius. I don't know how they're going to work the jet skis in there, but maybe we'll learn it. If that is what they're doing, then that's kind of interesting. I don't know that it's earth shattering, but it does show you the impact that if that timeline gets pruned, there's no Mobius. He never existed. So
And that would
I
be a major sacrifice if we have to choose that timeline, especially if Mobius is the one to make the choice.
yep.
All right. Lauren, here's where I want to go with the praise. You and I, we really were put through the ringer having to watch Ahsoka.
Mhm.
I didn't even watch Secret Invasion except for the first episode, and then I said we will not cover this on the channel. There's no way that people will watch this, and so that was it. There have been so many Star Wars and Marvel shows as of late, which have been they've been so bad that we either could not review them, we did review them and it was just awful, or we mocked them. In the case of She-Hulk, we just mocked it. There was no other option just to sit there and mock what was in front of us. This show is not that. Lauren, what is different about this show that makes it heads and shoulders above everything else we've seen on Disney Plus and puts it on par with the shows that are on Netflix and others? Now, I'm not saying that this is One Piece. I'm not saying that this is Wednesday. I'm not saying it's Stranger Things. I'm not saying it's Squid Games, but it's passable. It's workable. Like it could play on a different streaming platform that's not Disney and be a show.
I think it does have potential. I don't know that I would say that it's passable, but it's barely passable. And I think the reason that it is because we do have some history with Loki. There are a lot of people that don't like this iteration of Loki. One, because he's not the comic book Loki, and or he's not the Loki that we saw through the bulk of the MCU
Which
up until
yeah, and that doesn't make any sense either. I mean, why he is not the character that came from the movies and never had the full character arc. I don't understand why this Loki is the way he is, but whatever. We're stuck with him.
well, even so, I think people Tom Hiddleston, he buys into the character himself. He's committed to this character. He has charisma. I think the audience likes him. I think the same is true of Owen Wilson.
Hmm.
And I think that they put together part of the reason that I like this show generally is because of what they're doing with the tone. They're creating this suspenseful, odd kind of a paranoia-inducing environment in the TVA that kind of tickles a different part of your brain than most of the MCU does. This is not typical superhero action. This is
I
more.
thought Obi was good, and I thought that Jonathan Majors in this episode was much better.
Yeah, I agree. I still think there's more to OB that we're going to see too, though. I'm curious about that. But whatever the case, I think there's a lot of pieces here that you can do interesting things with, and they're not doing anything that is overtly offensive. I think that Sylvie is off-putting in most of her scenes, but I think that she could be a good character if she was written differently. I don't think the problem is the actress. I think it's how they are portraying the character. If they have a payoff for that, if they show why she is behaving the way that she is at the end of this thing, maybe they can make it work. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of elements here that a skilled writer could do an awful lot with, though. And I think it's not limited to just this one story, for instance, where we're just dealing with time run amok. There's a lot of interesting things you could do with the TVA, as long as the rest of the Marvel universe is doing well.
Absolutely. And they've got to find something to stop the bleeding. They have. I mean, this Phase 5 dive is going to continue on now because of the writer strike, and then the actor strike, the Hollywood strike that is not ending. Right, SAG-AFTRA no closer to coming to a resolution, it seems, than many months ago. And what that means is that the Marvels will be the last MCU film potentially until next holiday season, and that could be a full year of embarrassment for Marvel. They need a show like Loki to succeed. They need something to succeed.
There is still the time bomb potentially with Jonathan Majors too, which is that they have set up this Kang story, and yet he has potential legal issues
Yes.
that could derail where they're going with this too. This is part of why I keep thinking that there's something more to OB. It seems to me they touched on this a little bit that OB learned everything that he learned from Kang. Kang
Hmm.
learned everything he learned from OB. This would be an opportune way, if they needed to go this way, to switch off and make OB Kang.
And if OB is needed to step in and do that, we don't know what'll happen with Jonathan Majors. We don't want to prejudge anything there. We're not prejudiced against anyone, and everybody has the presumption of innocence. But should that happen, where Marvel Entertainment needs to jump ship and put OB as the bad guy, I would love to see Mr. Kwan, the OG short round, to play a bad guy. I'm up for that. That would be
Now,
very interesting.
I don't think he's ever done so, and
No.
that what an audience shocking flip that would be to go
Oh,
from
yes.
this likable, adorable character to now becoming a not just genocidal but multiversal murderer. Uh, that's maybe a way that you give Kang more gravitas than what we've seen so far.
That's right. Lauren, I'm going to shock you with my score for this episode.
Okay.
So, and this, I'm going to say to everybody out there, this is contingent on the next episodes being fulfilling. And that's not what happened in season 1. In season 1, the first 2 episodes were absolutely stunning. And then after that, it was like falling off a cliff into absolute propaganda. So they have not made me happy in the past in terms of finishing well. But if I give them the unearned benefit of the doubt, and if I presume that they'll get the next 2 episodes right, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10 because it was very surprising in some of the things that happened. I felt the tension throughout the episode. I enjoyed the intellectual intrigue that they have presented. I enjoyed that things did not play out as expected. I have my quibbles. I don't know how Renslayer and Miss Minutes got back so quickly. I don't think some of the decisions made by the main characters actually seemed likely. You mentioned Sylvie. I also think letting He Who Remains walk over to a hot cocoa machine was absolutely ridiculously contrived. But all that said, I had a good time with this. And if it pays off, it's an 8 out of 10. If not, I'll come back and fun saying what I really think. So, but that is really what I think. I think it's an 8 out of 10 if there's a payoff. Lauren, what's your score? You said this is your least favorite, but still not
Yeah,
bad.
I'm surprised. You're right.
I
I'm
told
surprised you
you.
gave it an 8. I think I would give this a 5 or a 6 if I'm being generous. Not that I'm not hating on it. To me, this was just passable. I've enjoyed the other episodes more than I enjoyed this one. The show overall so far, I think I'd probably give a 6 or maybe a 7 again if I'm being generous. Um,
I'm at a 6 out of 10 overall for the show right now. So I think we're on the exact same spot there.
I'm totally willing to be won over if they do something brilliant here in the end. I'm not really expecting that, and I don't think this is the thing that's going to rejuvenate interest in the MCU. I don't think that it's going to be this savior or setting up anything that's going to be a revival. But compared to everything else that I've seen them coming out with for quite some time now, I'm entertained, and it's not the greatest thing I've ever watched, but it's better than feeling like you're insulting me. I don't feel like you're sitting me on the couch and slapping me while I'm watching this. So
Let's pretend that the folks at Marvel have a plan. We know they don't. Let's pretend that they have a plan, and let's pretend that there's a best case scenario out there that might come true. So, folks from Marvel, if you're watching this, all right, here's what we would like. And Lauren, you correct me if you don't want this, okay?
okay,
If we can bounce off this show so that in the future, in perhaps Secret Wars, if we could have Spider-Man, Wolverine, Loki, uh, Mobius, and throw in some other characters, I'm up for that. I would love to see Loki with Spider-Man and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And hey, throw Deadpool in. I don't care. I don't think he would fit in there, but we have some characters, and there's not many. Okay, like you can't do anything with Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel. It has nothing to do with the fact they're female. They're just really bad. Monica Rambeau might work, I guess, but you've got a few characters that you could put together, and they would be interesting. And you don't have many left. Lauren, you agree with that? Maybe.
yeah, mostly. I think that I would add a couple of additional characters in there and also directors that I want to see for Secret Wars. I think Secret Wars is very, very important. You cannot screw up Secret Wars because that is the thing that's going to get you to the reboot. Through the construction of Battle World and pulling different heroes and villains from different realities to create a new, call it the Ultimate Marvel Universe, it lets you play with characters that you otherwise might not be able to. They already dipped a little bit into that in Quantumania by having alternate versions of characters show up. So my must-haves for Secret Wars is you already mentioned Wolverine and Spider-Man. This needs to be, I believe, the first appearance of Doctor Doom. Um, I think if you're going to have Loki there, like you just mentioned, we've seen him originally as a villain. We've seen him now do a hero turn for quite some time. We need to get him back to being a mischievous character. I want to see him where you're questioning where his loyalties lie. And I think Secret Wars is a great place to do that because he can play both a hero and a villain, depending on what he sees as necessary in the reconstruction of the universe that comes after. So I want to see Doctor Doom. I think it would be a good idea to maybe throw in a Professor X. Let's see a
Yeah,
little bit of let's see some X-Men besides just Wolverine. Um,
and bring
and
in
then
Mr. Stewart to play it one last time.
my final, if I had my wish list, get the Russo brothers back. I don't
Yep.
care what it takes to do it. They need to do Secret Wars. Give it to them. Kevin Feige, everybody else, stay away. Hand it to them. Say we need this universe rebooted. Make it happen.
And I'm going to give some ideas to Marvel too, because you are going to need some solid female characters. Sylvie's not that. No offense to the actress who plays Sylvie.
I
Sylvie's
know.
not that.
I know where you're going.
Miss Marvel, not that. Captain Marvel, not that. And we can name off, Girl Thor and She-Hulk. Please, Lord, no. But if you want to revitalize Wakanda, bring in Storm. If you want to bring in the X-Men, Rogue or Psylocke work great. If you want to have some real fun, let's do a real switcheroo and bring in Haley Steinfeld, not as the sidekick to Hawkeye, but rather bring in Gwen Stacy from the Spider-Verse with the animated films, have her come in as the animated character who comes into live action. That would be fun. There are options on the table, Marvel. Go for those. Don't give us the hand-me-down heroes that are male characters with she, girl, or female or woman attached to them with a hyphen. Stop that.
Is this the place where you would maybe bring in Sue Storm?
The only problem, Lauren, is we've got some potential insider leaks on that, and I'm not real hopeful on that one. So that's why I'm holding off on Sue Storm, is simply because, come on, Marvel, please. Like, this is the thing too, Lauren, and we'll wrap up here. The thing is, people might say, that we hate on this stuff and we don't like it and we're just negative. No. We are hoping that they will get their act together. And here's why. I was thinking about this earlier today. Ponder for a moment, folks out there. What kind of a world would we be in today if we told better stories that uplifted people and had them strive to be the best in themselves? I think, I'm not here to tell you that the world's woes lie at the feet of storytellers. That's not true. There are so many different influences that affect us, family and school and your occupation and your genetics, and all of these things have impacts. But you can't say that there's zero impact. It's more than zero that if we were telling good stories still with real good guys who really did good things and actually sacrificed and weren't virtuous just by merit of their skin color or their background or their anatomy, but they actually had to sacrifice the present to secure a better future. If we had been telling those stories, maybe it's not many people in this world, but maybe it's a few that would be better today, and maybe the world might be better, and maybe we should start doing that. So, you know what? We're not here to be negative about these franchises for the sake of being negative. We want to say, here's a better way. Go do that. Lauren, I'll give you the last word on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if nothing else, again, I won't say that Loki is great, but I will say it's good. And I'd be willing to watch more of it if they decided that they did want to produce more of it. You've got likable characters there. You've got a fantastic premise that I think that you can do a lot with. So kudos to them for actually producing something that I like. So far, I think it's the only Marvel show that I can say at the end, or at least so far, I kind of like it. So good for them.
Lauren, you just made me realize something. This second season, so eliminate the first season, this is my favorite Marvel season on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think so, without a doubt. I did kind of like WandaVision right up until the very end, and then they biffed it. And Falcon and Winter Soldier, I just despised. I wanted to like that show so much, but it was a heartbreaker. So Loki, at least, he remains in character. He is Loki and all the different versions of Loki. The charisma and the respect that he has for that character, I think, comes through. And when you have that, and when the audience can sense it, it kind of makes you one of us. It's important to have respect for the character. And if you do that, we'll forgive stumbles. It's okay to have a bad episode or a couple bad episodes or maybe not get everything right. But if you're trying, we can sense that. And it's important that we see that you're putting in the effort to try and tell a good story with the characters.
All right, folks. Well, you've heard it here. We like Loki. We don't love it, but we like Loki. And we see some options for Marvel. And we're hoping they'll play their cards right, because we're not here to see anybody fail. We hope that Marvel will get things figured out. There are significant signs that they won't, but that doesn't stop us from saying, hey, here's the right way. Here, hey, come here. This is the right path. Let's go. We'll root on anybody, I suppose. Lauren, thanks for being here. I am enjoying your YouTube channel that you have. And folks, I hope you do as well. Click on the link down in the description below. What's up next on your channel? What are you going to be reading next, Lauren?
I'm going right now through Spectre of the Past, which is the first book in the Hand of Thrawn duology. I had completed the original Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn a few weeks ago. I had put up a poll on X to ask people what they wanted me to read next. They didn't actually choose what I wanted them to, but I wanted to please the people, so here's where we're at. I think I'm on chapter 7, I think is the last one I read. Chapter 8 will be coming real soon.
And folks, Lorne has amassed more than 600 subscribers. Lots of people are really enjoying his content, and we would love to reach a point, Lorne, where your channel is more official in the eyes of YouTube. That 1,000 subscriber mark is out there, and we hope that you reach that. We are rooting for you, and it's going to be on the basis that you really are genius at so much of this when it comes to Star Wars, but way beyond that. Folks,
Thank you.
we hope you enjoyed this very much. Did we shock you? Did we shock you with our conclusion that right now, Loki Season 2 is the best season of Marvel on Disney Plus, period? Let us know down in the comments below. Also, give us your thoughts. Are we way off? Are we right? And also, let us know, where should we be aiming this weekend? We've got a number of topics that we need to cover, and we don't really know how to rank order this. Should we cover Five Nights at Freddy's? We're definitely going to cover South Park: The Pandering. But what else needs to be on our list of things that you're interested in? Drop a comment down below and let us know. If you enjoyed this conversation, click the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you do indeed stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. We hope you enjoyed the Halloween Pro Show Live. If you've not seen it yet, go check it out. I'm on camera for the very first time, and we had all kinds of hijinks that happened. So go check it out. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Listen up, my brothers and sisters. You've been listening to fills and those with an agenda to destroy your brain cells for far too long. It's time to change your way of doing things. Hold up. TPP is the place to be. Covering the news so honestly. It's a team that's cool and tried and true. Ahead of the culture curve, they're trying to keep you. Jonas and Pro, they run the show. And they dragged in the bearded culture casino. You got Valiant and Lord and Fourth of Line. Wonderful people, yeah, they're alright. They got weird bringing in people like Floral, but made no mistake with Lorena Creole. Amelia and John, stuttering guitarist. Martin and Tawny and someone called CMS. Fat Steven makes a bunch of all the graphics. Did I mention a partnership with Bending in the comics? That Sky is a guy and Doc Matt does the web stuff. There's probably some people I missed. I hope they're not telling you the news. That should be fun. With accurate info that's not been spun. You can figure it out as you will see. The TPP is the place to be.